the International Summit Hall was packed with leaders from across the world. Flags from dozens of nations hung high, and the air buzzed with quiet tension. Everyone knew why they had gathered, to discuss Africa's future in a shifting global order. Cameras clicked, screens streamed live, and millions watched from their homes. In the middle of it all sat Benjamin Netanyahu, his eyes sharp and calculating, and opposite him, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, calm but resolute, carrying the weight of an entire continent on his shoulders. When the microphone reached Netanyahu, he leaned forward, his voice confident, almost mocking. "Your land is ours," he declared coldly. "Your resources, your future, your destiny, controlled by us. Africa must remember who holds the power." His words echoed in the hall, and for a moment, silence fell. Some leaders nodded quietly, others avoided eye contact. The weight of history, the centuries of exploitation, hung heavy in the air. But across the table, Traoré did not flinch. His jaw tightened, his eyes steady. He let the silence stretch, refusing to be rushed. Then, with a voice firm and unwavering, he declared, "Step back." The word struck like thunder. He wasn't just speaking to Netanyahu, he was speaking to the entire world, to every nation that had ever treated Africa as a playground for greed. Whispers rippled through the audience. Journalists scribbled frantically, leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It was not just defiance, it was a statement of sovereignty, a line in the sand. For the first time in a long time, Africa's voice was not an echo, it was a roar. The hall erupted in murmurs, the kind of noise that signals history in the making. Netanyahu leaned back, narrowing his eyes, a faint smirk playing at his lips. He had faced countless confrontations in his career, but something about Traoré's calm defiance unsettled him. His words were short, sharp, and carried a weight that could not be dismissed. Trying to reassert control, Netanyahu tapped the table with his pen, his tone shifting from arrogance to cold calculation. "Africa can shout," he said, his voice cutting through the whispers, "but shouting does not change reality. Power belongs to those who can enforce it. We build alliances, we hold the weapons, we decide who stands and who falls. You think bold words will protect you?" His challenge lingered like a blade in the air. Traoré sat forward, hands clasped, unbothered. His eyes scanned the room, not at Netanyahu alone but at every leader who was listening. "Words can start wars," he said evenly, "but they can also end them. And today, my words are not just mine, they are Africa's." His voice did not rise, he didn't need to. The power was in his composure, in the conviction that refused to bow. The audience shifted again. Some leaders exchanged glances, weighing their alliances, their fears, their futures. For the younger nations, Traoré's defiance was hope. For the older powers, it was danger. And for the millions watching online, it was something more, it was pride, it was vindication. Netanyahu's smirk faded slightly as the tension in the hall thickened. He wasn't used to being challenged so directly, especially not in front of the world stage. His fingers tightened on the microphone, his voice colder now. "Defiance," he said, "is dangerous. You forget that history punishes those who refuse to recognize strength. Africa has always been fragmented, divided, dependent. One strong push, and it collapses." His words carried venom, designed to humiliate, to remind everyone of the old order. But Traoré did not blink. He leaned forward, his hands steady on the polished wood of the summit table. "History doesn't punish the defiant," he answered firmly. "It punishes the oppressors who believed they would rule forever. Every empire that said, 'Your land is ours' is now nothing but dust and memory. And Africa is still here, breathing, standing, unbroken." The crowd stirred, louder this time. The camera zoomed in on the two men, capturing every glance, every shadow of expression. Journalists tweeted in real time, hashtags about Africa and sovereignty began to trend worldwide. For those watching from African cities, Traoré's words felt like vindication. For those in Western capitals, it was a warning. Netanyahu's jaw tightened. He had not expected Traoré to seize the narrative so quickly. But Traoré was not merely speaking to him, he was addressing every nation, every citizen who had ever been told their land, their dignity, or their independence was negotiable. The moderator of the summit shifted uneasily, sensing the sparks turning into fire. He tried to steer the conversation back to trade agreements and development aid, but the tension in the room was impossible to ignore. All eyes remained locked on Netanyahu and Traoré. Netanyahu seized the moment, his voice rising with force. "You speak of broken empires," he snapped, "but you forget, they fell because they lacked vision, unity, and discipline. Do you really think Africa can rise when it still fights itself? When its people are divided by borders, languages, and tribes? Unity is a dream, Captain Traoré, and dreams don't win battles." His words were meant to cut deep, to expose the scars of Africa's past and twist them into weakness. But Traoré's lips curved into the faintest smile, not of amusement, but of certainty. "You confuse division with diversity," he replied steadily. "Africa is not weak because it is many, it is strong because it refuses to be one thing. We are nations, yes, but we are also a people. And for the first time in centuries, those people know the truth: no one else owns their land, no one else writes their destiny. That is the unity you fear. And that is why you will fail." The hall erupted, not in chaos, but in applause from several African delegations. The sound echoed across the room like a rising tide. Netanyahu froze, caught off guard. His words, once weapons, were now blunted against the shield of conviction. The cameras captured everything, the smirk vanishing from Netanyahu's face, the fire burning brighter in Traoré's eyes. Netanyahu gripped the edge of the table, frustration flickering in his eyes. He leaned into the microphone again, his voice sharp, trying to reclaim authority. "You think applause makes you powerful? You think words make you untouchable? Africa's history is littered with rebellions, uprisings, men who claimed they could change the world, and where are they now? Forgotten. Buried. Power is not in speeches, Captain Traoré. Power is in control. And control is something Africa will never hold." The words hung heavy, slicing through the applause like a blade. For a moment, silence returned. But Traoré did not retreat. He placed both hands firmly on the table, leaning forward as if to close the distance between them. His voice, calm but filled with fire, broke through the tension. "Forgotten?" Traoré said, his tone unwavering. "Every rebellion you dismiss is the reason Africa still stands. Every uprising you mock was a stone laid in the foundation of our freedom. We are not buried, we are the soil itself. And from this soil rises something no empire, no army, no threat can erase. You mistake survival for weakness, Netanyahu. But it is our greatest strength." The hall erupted again, louder this time. Leaders who had remained silent began nodding, some clapping despite themselves. The balance of the room shifted. Netanyahu, once commanding the spotlight, now seemed cornered. The world could see it, the clash was no longer just between two men, but between two visions, one clinging to control, the other demanding freedom. Netanyahu's face hardened. His voice dropped, no longer booming but edged with steel. "You talk about survival as if it is enough," he said. "But survival without dominance is nothing. Africa survives, yes, but who shapes its destiny? Who controls its wealth, its trade, its future? Do not fool yourself, Traoré. Without the backing of true power, you are just a man with slogans. And slogans do not stop armies." The words were a threat wrapped in logic, a reminder of the machinery behind global politics. The hall grew tense once more. Cameras zoomed in on Netanyahu's sharp gaze, then on Traoré's composed expression. Traoré inhaled slowly, then spoke with unshaken clarity. "You mistake survival for surrender. And you mistake Africa's patience for weakness. We know who has stolen our gold, our resources, our dignity. We know who writes treaties with one hand while exploiting us with the other. But understand this, Africa is not asking for permission. Africa is reclaiming. And when people reclaim what is theirs, no army, no empire, no threat can stand in their way. Gasps echoed through the room. Several African leaders rose to their feet in applause, their voices rising above the silence of others who sat stunned. Online, the exchange was already going viral. Clips of Traoré's words were spreading with captions like, "Africa's fire cannot be stopped." Netanyahu tightened his grip on the microphone, his smirk gone, his silence louder than any reply. For the first time in the confrontation, it was clear, he was on the defensive. The moderator tried once more to cut in, but it was already too late, the summit hall had become an arena. Netanyahu straightened in his seat, his voice rising, sharper now, almost desperate to reclaim the authority slipping from his grip. So you would challenge the order of the world? You would defy the alliances, the nations, the power structures that built stability? Do you really believe Africa can withstand the storm that comes with rebellion? Your words will drag your people into fire, and you will be the one blamed when they burn. The weight of the statement pressed heavily on the room, drawing murmurs of unease. For a split second, it seemed like Netanyahu had turned the tide, casting Traoré not as a hero, but as a reckless risk-taker. But Traoré leaned back, his eyes sharp, his voice calm yet filled with unshakable conviction. "You mistake fire for destruction," he said. "But fire also cleanses. Fire also forges. If Africa must walk through flames to burn away chains, then so be it. Better to rise in fire than kneel in silence. And when the ashes settle, it will not be Africa that is gone, it will be the illusions of those who thought they could own it." The hall went still, then erupted once again. The sound of clapping and cheering from African delegations thundered across the chamber, drowning out the attempts of others to quiet the storm. Hashtags like #AfricaWillRise and #Traoré Netanyahu lit up social media platforms, clips of his words spreading like wildfire. For the first time, Netanyahu's face revealed something he hadn't shown before, uncertainty. And the world saw it. Netanyahu clenched his jaw, the rhythm of applause echoing like thunder in his ears. He tried once more, his tone shifting from sharp to icy, as if to warn rather than argue. "You speak of burning chains, Captain, but fire spreads. It consumes the innocent along with the guilty. Africa may believe it can rise, but revolutions eat their own children. History has proven it again and again. When the smoke clears, your people will curse your name." The words carried menace, calculated to paint Traoré not as a liberator, but as a danger to his own people. The hall went quiet again, diplomats leaning forward, waiting for Traoré's response. Traoré rose slowly from his seat, his military uniform crisp under the bright lights. His presence alone silenced the whispers. When he spoke, his voice was measured, heavy with purpose. "History has proven many things," he said, "but one truth above all, people only curse the tyrants who chained them, not the ones who broke those chains. If fire comes, it will not be started by us, it will be started by those who fear our freedom. And when that day comes, Africa will not curse me. Africa will remember me as the man who told you, step back." The chamber shook with applause, chants rising from African delegations. Cameras flashed, capturing Netanyahu's frozen expression, contrasted with Traoré's calm defiance. Across the world, screens lit up with headlines, "Africa stands tall, Traoré defies Netanyahu." The summit had turned into something larger than itself. It was no longer a meeting of nations, but a stage where a continent's voice roared against centuries of silence. The moderator's gavel struck the desk, but it was drowned out by the roar of voices. Netanyahu, visibly rattled now, leaned forward, speaking in a low growl, the microphone amplifying every syllable. "Do not mistake noise for victory, Captain. You may win cheers in this room, but outside these walls, the world is ruled by strength, not speeches. We have allies, armies, influence that your applause cannot silence. If you truly want war, you will drag your nation, and perhaps your entire continent, into ruin. The words were meant to intimidate, to reassert dominance. But the tone betrayed him, the room could feel it. Netanyahu was no longer dictating terms, he was reacting, scrambling to contain the moment slipping through his grasp. Traoré did not flinch. He stepped closer to the microphone, his voice steady, each word cutting with precision. You speak of allies, of armies, of influence. But I see a man clinging to the shadow of fear. You think Africa's rise means your fall, and perhaps you are right. But understand this, ruin does not come from freedom. Ruin comes from those who try to chain it. And if you call that war, then hear me now, we are not afraid. The chamber exploded. Delegates from across Africa rose, chanting Traoré's name, pounding the desks in unison. The sound was deafening, shaking the hall like a storm. Netanyahu sat back, his expression unreadable, but his silence spoke louder than his threats. On social media, clips were already trending worldwide. Headlines flashed, Traoré defies Netanyahu's threats, Africa speaks with one voice. The confrontation had become more than a debate, it was history being written in real time. The summit hall felt less like a diplomatic chamber and more like the beating heart of a continent rising. Delegates who had once sat in silence were now on their feet, the thunder of their chants carrying across the globe through every live broadcast. The world was watching, not a clash of policies, but a clash of visions. Netanyahu adjusted his papers, but the gesture betrayed the tremor in his hand. He glanced at the cameras, knowing his words would be dissected across every news channel. Yet before he could speak, Traoré raised his voice one final time, commanding the hall's attention. History will remember this day, he said, his eyes scanning the room. Not because one leader threatened Africa, but because Africa answered as one. We do not fear your armies. We do not bow to your alliances. We are not here to be lectured, owned, or broken. We are here to say what every African already knows, our chains are gone, and we will never wear them again. The hall erupted in a roar so powerful it seemed to shake the very walls. Delegates pounded their fists on the desks, voices united in chants that echoed across the globe. Even leaders from outside Africa looked on with a mix of awe and unease. Netanyahu sat back, his silence becoming his defeat. Across the world, the moment replayed endlessly, Traoré standing tall, declaring Africa unbroken. On social media, hashtags surged to the top of global trends, hashtag Africa unbroken, hashtag step back, hashtag Traoré's Netanyahu. It was no longer just a confrontation at a summit. It had become a symbol, a declaration, a spark. And as the cameras flashed, one truth was undeniable, Africa had spoken, and the world had heard. Today's confrontation was not just about two leaders exchanging words. It was about a continent standing tall, declaring that its destiny cannot be written by foreign hands. Netanyahu's threats were loud, but Traoré's resolve was louder. Africa's message was clear, we will not bow, we will not break, and we will not surrender our future. This is more than politics, it's history being forged in real time. Across the world, people will remember this moment, not for the threats made, but for the courage to answer them with strength. To every viewer, know this, Africa has spoken, and its voice cannot be silenced. The future belongs to those who defend their freedom, and today, Traoré reminded the world, Africa is unbroken.